Today, we'll be focusing on optimizing resource utilization, which is crucial for any organization's success. Our goal is to strengthen cost control, boost productivity, and ensure we make the most efficient use of our resources. This presentation, developed by Dr. Jawad Sebaali, will guide us through these essential strategies. By the end of this training, you'll be able to identify the key drivers of resource waste in your organization and apply practical cost control methods to reduce unnecessary expenditure. You'll also learn how to measure and improve workforce and operational productivity using proven techniques. Beyond that, we will focus on making informed decisions about allocating your physical, financial, and human resources effectively. Ultimately, this training aims to help you build a culture of continuous improvement that sustains resource efficiency over time. Whether you're just starting your career, managing a team, or leading a business unit, every concept we cover is designed to connect directly to the decisions you face in your role. Resource utilization is all about how well an organization makes use of what it already has, whether that's people, money, equipment, time, or information. It's not just about cutting costs or spending less. It's about getting more value from every resource without sacrificing quality or exhausting your team. Every organization has limited resources, and the difference between what's available and what's used productively represents a hidden cost. This gap often goes unnoticed because it's rarely measured. Let's break down the key types of resources. First, human resources. This is the skills, time, and capacity of your people, who are your most valuable and variable asset. Then there are financial resources, which include budgets, capital, cash flow, and expenditure. It's about what you spend and how wisely those funds are allocated. Physical assets like equipment, facilities, technology, and inventory must earn their place by contributing value to ongoing operations. Finally, time, which is the only non-renewable resource. How you allocate time essentially dictates how effectively all other resources can be used. Understanding and optimizing each of these areas is crucial for improving overall resource utilization. Poor resource utilization isn't usually about laziness or incompetence. It's mainly because organizations don't have clear visibility into how their resources are actually being used. When no one tracks utilization rates, waste goes unnoticed, and invisible problems never get addressed. Common causes include unclear priorities, duplicated efforts, outdated processes, poor planning, and siloed departments. These factors all contribute to chronic underutilization of resources that the organization already owns. The cost of doing nothing is significant. Every hour of idle equipment, every overstaffed meeting, and every redundant process pulls from the same budget. Over time, this inefficient use of resources builds up into a substantial and entirely avoidable expense. Here we have the three pillars of resource efficiency, which are crucial for any successful operation. First is cost control, which means managing spending deliberately to avoid unnecessary expenses. Next is productivity, where the goal is to get more value from the resources and inputs you already have. And then there's asset management, which focuses on maximizing the life and output of your equipment and resources. These three pillars are interdependent. Cutting costs without improving productivity only creates scarcity, and improving productivity without managing assets can lead to premature equipment failure. So, for lasting gains, it's essential to address all three together. Cost control is all about keeping a close watch on spending to make sure it matches our organizational goals. It's important to understand that cost control is proactive, meaning it stops unnecessary expenses before they happen, unlike cost cutting, which is a reactive response to financial pressure. Effective cost control relies on three key things: having clear visibility into where our money goes, setting defined spending limits and approval processes, and regularly comparing plan versus actual expenses. Without these, even the best managers can end up overspending. not out of carelessness, but simply because they don't have the right information to make smarter decisions. To effectively control costs, we first need to understand their nature, starting with direct and indirect costs. Direct costs are directly tied to production or delivery. Things like raw materials, labor for a specific project, or packaging. These costs are directly traceable to a product or service, making them easier to measure and control at the project level. On the other hand, indirect costs support overall operations but aren't linked to a single output. Examples include rent, administrative salaries, and utilities. These costs are shared across the organization and often get overlooked when trying to reduce expenses. Now, let's look at fixed and variable costs. Fixed costs stay constant no matter the output volume. Things like leases, insurance, or salaried staff. These costs require more strategic decisions to manage rather than day-to-day operational actions. Variable costs, however, fluctuate based on activity levels and provide the best opportunities for immediate cost control through operational decisions. Understanding these distinctions helps us focus our efforts where they'll have the greatest impact. When we talk about building a cost control system, it's important to understand that it's much more than just a spreadsheet. It's actually a combination of processes, responsibilities, and tools that provide your organization with continuous insight into spending. Without a proper structure, even the most detailed budget tracking ends up being a post-mortem exercise rather than proactive management tool. To make the system effective, we need to focus on several key actions: conducting quarterly reviews to assess progress, tracking expenses monthly to stay on top of spending, assigning clear owners to each cost category, and setting baselines to measure against. The most crucial step here is assigning ownership. When everyone is responsible for a budget, it often means no one really is. Each cost category must have a specific owner who is accountable for keeping costs within limits and explaining any differences. Variance analysis is all about comparing what you plan to spend against what you actually spent. A positive variance means you spent less than planned, which is good, while a negative variance indicates overspending. But the number alone isn't enough. You really need to understand why that variance happened. There are two key types of variances to watch for. First, price variance happens when the cost per unit of a resource changes. Second, volume variance occurs when you use more or less of a resource than originally planned. By separating these, you can pinpoint whether the issue is with procurement, operations, or your planning assumptions. Most importantly, variance analysis only adds value if it leads to action. If your monthly reviews just report numbers without driving decisions, then it's not a management tool. It's just an exercise in reporting. Zero-based budgeting, or ZBB, serves as a powerful reset tool by fundamentally changing how we approach budgeting. Unlike traditional budgeting, which starts by adjusting last year's figures up or down, ZBB begins from zero every cycle. This means every single expense must be justified from scratch, regardless of past budgets, which encourages a fresh, critical look at all costs. ZBB really shines when an organization needs to restructure its cost base, especially during major strategic shifts or when legacy spending is built up without much scrutiny. It forces a necessary conversation about what expenses are truly essential. However, for stable and mature operations with predictable costs, ZBB can sometimes create friction by consuming a lot of time without much benefit. In those cases, a hybrid approach, applying ZBB mainly to discretionary spending, can strike a good balance between thoroughness and efficiency. Procurement decisions are crucial because they have a direct impact on cost control throughout the entire operation. Paying more than necessary for materials, services, or equipment immediately raises the baseline for all your downstream costs. Managing supplier relationships, contract terms, and purchasing processes effectively can help you control these expenses. Consolidating your supplier base by purchasing from fewer suppliers increases your buying volume with each one, which usually gives you leverage for better pricing and service terms. Additionally, it's important to review contracts regularly, since agreements that were competitive a few years ago might no longer reflect current market rates. Scheduling regular contract reviews allows you to renegotiate or rebid, ensuring you keep costs in check. Lastly, tracking supplier performance is essential. Factors like on-time delivery, defect rates, and overall service quality all affect your total cost of ownership, not just the upfront purchase price. Keeping an eye on these metrics helps you measure what truly matters. When we talk about productivity, what we're really measuring is a ratio of output to input. If you get more output from the same input, your productivity increases. Similarly, producing the same output with less input also means you're more productive. It's important to understand that productivity doesn't mean just working faster, longer, or multitasking more. Many organizations confuse being busy with being productive. For example, a team that has long meetings, responds instantly to every message, and works late may seem busy but might not actually deliver much. True productivity improvement is about removing the friction between effort and outcome, not just piling on more effort. Now, when we say output, we're referring to what you produce. That could be products, services, decisions, or results delivered within a set time frame. On the other hand, input is what you consume to make that happen. Time, labor, money, materials, and energy. Ultimately, productivity is a ratio. Output divided by input. Improving this ratio is a key goal for any organization aiming to work smarter, not just harder. Before we can improve productivity, we first need to understand where it's being lost. Productivity losses typically follow several common patterns seen in almost every organization. One major area is waiting time, where work pauses because people are waiting for approvals, information, materials, or decisions from others. This is especially common and often overlooked in white-collar jobs. Another significant loss comes from rework, which happens when tasks must be redone due to errors. This not only wastes time but duplicates resource use, often caused by unclear instructions, insufficient training, or tight deadlines. Then there's context switching. When people jump between unrelated tasks, their brain needs time to reset, leading to slower progress and lower quality work. Finally, unnecessary meetings can drain collective time without clear decisions or outcomes. And since each attendee's time is value, these can add up to a big productivity drain. Understanding these patterns helps us target improvements effectively. Process mapping is really about drawing out, step by step, exactly how work gets done in your organization. Many people think they understand their processes, but when you actually map them, inefficiencies like gaps, redundancies, and bottlenecks become clear in a way that just talking about the work never reveals. To do this, you start by documenting each step, then design the flow, identify any delays, and finally implement and measure improvements. And you don't need any fancy software for this. A simple whiteboard, sticky notes, and the input of the people who do the work every day are all you need to create shared visibility. Automation plays a crucial role in boosting productivity by taking over repetitive, rule-based tasks. These systems or machines can perform such tasks faster, more consistently, and at a lower cost, which frees up human resources for more valuable work. However, it's important to understand that automation doesn't replace human judgment, creativity, or complex problem solving. Those are uniquely human strengths. Tasks like data entry, invoice processing, scheduling notifications, generating status reports, and standard compliance checks are ideal candidates for automation because they are high volume and require little judgment. Automating these can save a significant amount of human time. On the other hand, tasks such as client negotiation, conflict resolution, product design, and strategic decision-making demand nuanced judgment and strong human relationships. Automating these areas wouldn't cut costs effectively. In fact, it could lower the quality of outcomes. So, automation works best when it complements rather than replaces human capabilities. When it comes to workforce productivity, many organizations focus primarily on headcount, how many people they have, the hours they work, and the cost per person. But that only tells part of the story. What really matters is what those people are producing. One key factor is role clarity. When employees know exactly what they're responsible for and what success looks like, they can focus their efforts more effectively. Ambiguity in roles often leads to lost productivity because people aren't sure where to direct their energy. Another important aspect is skill matching. Assigning tasks to employees whose skills align with the job reduces both time spent and errors. When tasks are mismatched, fixing mistakes takes longer and costs more than getting it right from the outset. Finally, feedback loops make a big difference. Providing regular, specific feedback lets employees self-correct before small issues become big problems. Without this, low-quality work can persist simply because no one has pointed out the need for change. These three areas, role clarity, skill matching, and feedback, work together to drive real productivity beyond just counting heads. Time is a unique organizational resource because once it's spent, it cannot be stored, borrowed, or recovered. Despite this, many organizations manage time very loosely, without clear structures for how collective time is allocated, protected, or wasted. One of the most practical ways to improve time management is through calendar audits. By having your team review 2 weeks of their scheduled time and categorize each meeting, asking whether it leads to a decision or output, if it could be handled asynchronously, or if their attendance is really necessary, you can uncover inefficiencies. Often, you'll find that a large portion of scheduled meetings produce no result that couldn't have been achieved with a simple written update. This approach helps teams reclaim valuable time and focus on what truly moves work forward. Let's talk about how to run meetings more efficiently. First, it's crucial to set a clear agenda/emphasis and distribute in advance. This way, everyone comes prepared, and we avoid wasting time at the start figuring out the meeting's purpose. Next, limit attendance to only those who need to make decisions or provide key input. Smaller groups move faster and cost less per hour, while others can be kept in the loop with summary. Always end meetings by clearly recording the decisions made and assigning next steps. Without this, the meeting is just a discussion, not a productive management activity. Finally, consider defaulting to asynchronous communication whenever possible. Before scheduling, ask if a well-written message or document could achieve the same results, especially for updates or information sharing. This approach keeps calendars clearer and processes smoother. Physical asset management is crucial because these assets, like machinery, vehicles, technology, and facilities, represent a major capital investment for any organization. To get the most value out of them, you need active management rather than just letting them sit idle. Many organizations lose value by deferring maintenance or using equipment well past a productive life, which causes assets to depreciate faster than necessary. When assets are idle or underutilized, they don't just fail to contribute to cost efficiency. They actually tie up capital that could be better spent or removed from the balance sheet. Additionally, relying on asset registers that are updated only during audits can create a misleading picture of how your assets are being used. Instead, continuous tracking is essential to truly understand and optimize asset utilization. Today, we're looking at the difference between reactive and preventive maintenance. Reactive maintenance means fixing equipment only after it breaks down. While it may seem cheaper initially because you don't spend anything until failure occurs, it actually leads to unplanned downtime, higher repair costs, and can create safety risks. In contrast, preventive maintenance is all about scheduling maintenance before any failure happens. This approach increases uptime, extends the life of your assets, and ultimately reduces the total cost of ownership. The key to making this shift is discipline, using a maintenance log and scheduling work regularly. And the good news is you don't need fancy technology to start. Even a shared calendar and simple tracking sheet can make a big difference. Many organizations are spending money on technology they're not fully using. Often, software licenses and digital tools are purchased with the best intentions, but they end up underutilized because staff aren't properly trained, or the tools don't fit actual workflows, or sometimes better options come along before the investment pays off. To get real value from what you have, start by auditing your current tools. Make a detailed list of every digital tool your organization pays for and check how much they're actually being used. Look for overlap where multiple tools perform the same function and consolidate where possible. Next, focus on training for depth. Most people only use a small portion of a tool's features, so providing targeted training on the high-value features can greatly increase your return on investment. Finally, regularly retire and use licenses. Keeping licenses that no one uses is pure waste. Conducting a quarterly review helps prevent this waste from silently adding up over time. Energy is one of the most predictable and controllable operating costs for any organization, yet it's often viewed as a fixed overhead instead of a variable that can be managed. By making small behavioral and operational changes, we can achieve significant reductions in energy costs without spending a dime on capital investments. For example, adjusting heating and cooling schedules to align with when spaces are actually occupied, installing motion-sensitive lighting, and making sure equipment is powered down after hours all lead to direct savings. These actions aren't just about being environmentally friendly. They're smart operational decisions that have clear, measurable financial benefits. This approach helps businesses treat energy as a cost they can actively control, improving their bottom line, while also enhancing efficiency. Inventory management is crucial because it directly impacts a company's cash flow and operational efficiency. Inventory represents capital that has already been spent but hasn't yet turned into revenue. Holding too much inventory can tie up valuable cash, lead to higher storage costs, and increase the risk of items becoming obsolete. On the other hand, holding too little inventory can cause stockouts, which result in delays and lost production or sales. Balancing inventory carefully is essential to avoid these hidden costs and keep the business running smoothly. Accurate demand forecasting is crucial because it helps us avoid the costs associated with both overstocking and understocking. You don't need fancy software for this. Instead, focus on consistent data collection, honestly comparing past forecasts with actual outcomes, and having a system to update forecasts as demand changes. First, collect at least 12 months of historical sales or consumption data to identify seasonal trends and unusual spikes. Then, set reorder points by calculating when to place new orders based on supplier lead times and your safety stock. Finally, review and adjust your forecast regularly, ideally every month, to prevent errors from piling up and to ensure your stock levels always match real demand. Outsourcing is fundamentally a resource allocation decision rather than just a way to cut costs. It involves transferring certain tasks to external providers who can perform them more efficiently, often due to their scale, specialized skills, or advanced technology. When done properly, outsourcing frees up your internal team to focus on higher value activities that drive your business forward. However, if not managed well, it can lead to dependency on outside vendors, quality issues, and hidden costs that surpass any initial savings. So, when does outsourcing make sense? It's best suited for activities where external providers clearly benefit from economies of scale. The work doesn't contribute to your competitive advantage, and when your internal resources are genuinely stretched thin. On the other hand, You should keep work internal if it's central to your customer experience, involves sensitive data, or requires deep institutional knowledge. These aspects are simply too critical to delegate and too complex to effectively oversee from a distance. Workforce planning is all about matching the right capacity to the actual demand we face. It means making sure we have the right number of people with the right skills available exactly when we need them. If we get this wrong, we end up with two costly problems: overstaffing during slow periods, which wastes money on salaries and benefits for unused capacity, and understaffing during busy times, leading to overtime costs, quality issues, delayed deliveries, and even lost business. The key to avoiding these pitfalls is using a structured planning process that ties staffing decisions directly to future workload projections, not just relying on past headcount. This approach helps us maintain a balanced workforce that meets demand efficiently and effectively. The cost of employee turnover extends far beyond just hiring a replacement. First, there are the recruitment costs, things like advertising, agency fees, screening time, and interview hours that represent direct expenses even before a new employee starts. These costs are immediate and can be completely avoided if turnover is prevented. Then, during onboarding and training, new hires take time to reach full productivity. Meanwhile, experienced colleagues have to divert their attention to support them, which creates a dual productivity cost for the organization. Another significant impact is lost institutional knowledge. When seasoned employees leave, they take valuable accumulated knowledge with them, and rebuilding that experience is often slow, expensive, and sometimes impossible, especially if documentation is lacking. Finally, high turnover affects morale and continuity. It sends a message of instability to both remaining staff and customers, disrupts project flow, and raises doubts about whether the organization is a stable and rewarding place to build a career. Delegation is one of the most underused productivity tools available to managers. When senior leaders hold on to tasks that can be handled by others, they limit their own ability to focus on higher value work. And at the same time, they miss out on giving junior team members valuable growth opportunities. But delegation isn't just about passing tasks along. It requires clear communication about what outcome is expected, how much authority the person has, what support is available, and when the manager should step in. Without this clarity, delegation can easily turn into micromanagement or complete neglect, both of which hurt productivity and team development. Continuous improvement is really about developing the habit of regularly looking at how we do our work and making small, intentional tweaks that add up over time. You don't need a fancy program or special certification to do this. Just curiosity, some way to measure progress, and the willingness to change what isn't working. The process starts by observing performance closely, then identifying areas where improvements can be made. After that, it's important to test those changes and measure the results to see if they're effective. One of the biggest challenges people face with continuous improvement isn't resistance to change itself, but rather not setting aside regular, protected time to reflect on how work is going. When we don't make time for reflection, immediate pressures tend to take over and block any progress toward improvement. That's why carving out this time consistently is crucial for lasting growth. Root cause analysis is all about fixing problems permanently by getting to the bottom of why they happen in the first place, instead of just treating the symptoms, which is what most organizations do because it's faster. We focus on understanding and addressing the real cause so the problem doesn't keep coming back. First, it's crucial to define the problem clearly. Describe exactly what happened, when it happened, and how big the impact was. If the problem statement is vague, the solution will be too. Then use the 5 whys technique, asking why repeatedly, usually about 3 to 5 times, to peel back the layers and uncover the root cause. Finally, you need to design a corrective action that tackles the root cause itself. And don't stop there. Make sure to verify after implementing the fix that the problem really is gone before you consider the case closed. Resource efficiency doesn't happen by accident or goodwill alone. It needs strong accountability structures to really take hold. This means making performance visible and having clear consequences for the results, both positive rewards and corrective actions. First, it's crucial to assign clear ownership. Every budget line, asset category, or workforce segment needs a specific person responsible for its performance. Shared ownership usually ends up meaning no one's accountable. Next, you want to make performance visible by regularly publishing data on utilization, costs, and efficiency. Just having this information out in the open often changes behavior long before formal reviews occur. And finally, establishing regular review rhythms, like monthly operational check-ins and quarterly strategic reviews, helps teams catch issues early, keeping small problems from turning into big, costly ones. These structures together really build a culture of accountability that drives sustained resource efficiency. Cross-functional collaboration is essential to reducing waste, especially since resource waste often happens at the points where departments hand off work or fail to share information effectively. It's not about having more meetings, but about creating structured coordination where dependencies exist. For example, when procurement makes decisions without input from operations, it can lead to specifications that don't fit production needs. Similarly, finance setting budgets without consulting frontline managers results in targets that are disconnected from what's really happening on the ground. Bringing the right people together at the right time is a smart move toward resource efficiency. You cannot manage what you do not measure, and measuring the wrong things can be just as harmful as measuring nothing. The key is to focus on a few critical metrics that provide a clear and timely view of how effectively resources are being used. One essential measure is the capacity utilization rate, which tells us what percentage of available capacity is actually being used over a certain period. Low rates suggest idle resources, while consistently high rates warn of overload and the need for more capacity. Another important metric is the cost per unit of output, which tracks whether we're spending more or less to achieve the same results. If this cost rises without improvements in quality, it signals inefficiency. The on-time delivery rate serves as an indicator both planning accuracy and resource availability. Frequent delays point to a mismatch between what we promise and what we can deliver. Finally, budget variance by category measures the difference between plan and actual spending, helping us pinpoint where financial controls are effective and where they need improvement. Together, these metrics give us a balanced picture to manage resources wisely. Benchmarking is all about learning from organizations that are similar to ours. It's the process of comparing our performance with that of our peers, competitors, or industry standards to identify where we might be falling short and where we can realistically aim to improve. This practice helps answer a crucial question that looking at our own data alone can't. Are we truly performing well, or are we just doing better than we did before? For benchmarking to be effective, it's important to compare apples to apples, meaning the same metrics, cost boundaries, and time periods. Comparing across different industries or business models can be misleading, so such benchmarks should only serve as general guidance, not exact goals. And finally, always make sure the comparison really fits your specific context before making decisions based on it. The relationship between quality and efficiency is often misunderstood. Quality and efficiency are not in conflict. When quality is poor, it becomes one of the most expensive drains on an organization's resources. Think about rework, warranty claims, customer complaints, and returns. All these require resources that ideally should only be used once, not repeatedly. Now, let's consider the cost of poor quality. These costs show up everywhere. Scrap and rework in production, handling complaints in service departments, processing returns in retail, and even repairing a damaged reputation. These expenses quietly add up until they are finally measured and reported. On the flip side, quality directly translates to efficiency. Getting things right the first time means resources are used only once, which significantly cuts down on waste. Maintaining a consistent focus on doing work correctly from the start reduces overall resource consumption more effectively than any cost-cutting measures applied later on. This is why integrating quality into efficiency efforts is so critical. Office and facility space is often one of the biggest expenses for organizations, especially in urban areas. However, it's surprising how rarely space utilization is tracked with the same attention we give to financial or operational metrics. This means many organizations end up paying for space that sits unused for large parts of the week. One effective approach to tackle this is activity-based working, where employees select their workspace depending on the task they're doing, rather than having fixed desks. This can significantly reduce the total space needed without limiting how many people the organization can accommodate. But before making any changes, it's crucial to measure real occupancy patterns, looking at data by floor, day, and time, because common assumptions about space use often don't match reality. When we talk about change management and resource transitions, the key challenge is that changing how resources are used almost always means changing how people work. Many efficiency programs fail because while the technical solution might be solid, the human transition is not handled well. To succeed, we need to train people by teaching them new ways of working and then consistently reinforce those new behaviors. It's also important to explain why these changes are happening to help people understand the reasons behind them. Providing support throughout the transition period is crucial to help ease the adjustment. Remember, resistance to change isn't usually about the change itself. It's about uncertainty, loss of familiarity, or worries that the new approach isn't fully thought through. So, it's essential to address those concerns directly rather than dismiss them. As senior leaders, your role in resource efficiency is critical. Resource efficiency isn't just a middle management issue. The decisions that shape how resources are used, things like capital allocation, organizational structure, technology investments, hiring, and strategic priorities, are made at the highest levels. First, setting the standard is essential. When leaders practice resource discipline by rigorously reviewing their own budgets, challenging unnecessary spending, and safeguarding their team's time, they send a clear message that this behavior is expected throughout the organization. Next, removing structural barriers is key. Many inefficiencies come from the way organizations are structured, such as siloed budgets or duplicated functions. Only senior leaders have the authority to break down these walls and align priorities effectively. Finally, it's crucial to allocate resources for improvement. Lasting change requires time and sometimes financial investment. Leaders who fail to protect these resources may find that urgent operational demands always overshadow efforts to drive meaningful, long-term improvements. Middle managers play a crucial role as the transmission layer of any resource efficiency effort. They take broad organizational goals and turn them into daily decisions about how their teams spend time, which tools they use, and how they approach their tasks. This role carries both great influence and significant accountability. One key point is to plan before committing. It's important to review your team's workload and resource availability before taking on new tasks because overloading your team can lead to quality issues and lower morale down the line. Another critical practice is to track utilization actively. You need to know which team members or resources are fully engaged, which ones have capacity, and which are overloaded. This understanding is a foundation for making practical efficiency decisions. Finally, coaching for efficiency is essential. Help your team identify and eliminate small daily obstacles, whether it's lengthy approvals, slow tools, or outdated processes, so they can work more smoothly and effectively. As junior professionals, your contribution to resource efficiency is crucial because it's not just about leadership. Each of you has a direct impact every day. How you manage your time, the quality of your work, and your communication habits all influence how resources are used. First, own your time. Protect focused work periods and minimize context switching. It's important to push back politely on meetings that don't require your presence because your time is an organizational asset, not just personal. Next, report problems early. When you spot waste or inefficiencies, speak up. Catching issues early saves significant costs, and your close connection to daily operations gives you insights that managers might miss. Finally, do it right the first time. Take the time to fully understand tasks up front. Ask questions if needed, and check your work carefully before submitting. This approach reduces rework and helps keep costs down for everyone involved. This case study focuses on Toyota Motor Corporation and its breakthrough Toyota Production System, or TPS. Developed in response to post-war resource constraints in Japan, TPS is built on two core principles: Jidoka, which means building quality directly into the process, and just-in-time production, producing exactly what's needed, when it's needed and in the right amount. This approach changed manufacturing by identifying 8 critical types of waste, including overproduction, weighting, and defects, among others. By systematically eliminating these wastes, Toyota was able to reduce costs, shorten lead times, and boost quality, all without increasing their workforce. This system, now widely studied as lean manufacturing, has had a profound impact on production efficiency worldwide. What we can learn from Toyota goes beyond the sheer size of their operations. It's really about their core principles. They didn't start by pouring money into technology or big capital investments. Instead, they began with careful, rigorous observation of how work was actually done, and then committed relentlessly to eliminating anything that didn't add value. An important insight is that waste is normal, not exceptional. The Toyota Production System assumes waste is always present unless you've closely examined the process. The aim isn't to assign blame, but to identify and remove the waste itself, improving the workflow. Also, Toyota understands that the people closest to the work are the ones who know it best. By involving frontline workers in spotting problems and suggesting improvements, Toyota gains more accurate and effective solutions than if decisions were made only by managers removed from daily operations. Finally, small, frequent improvements, the practice of Kaizen, are much more powerful than occasional big changes. These continuous, incremental upgrades add up over time to produce major performance boosts and are much easier to sustain in the long run. This approach is a key reason for Toyota's lasting success. Culture plays a crucial role in whether resource efficiency becomes a long-term habit or just a fleeting effort. If a company treats efficiency merely as a box to check or a report to file, those good behaviors quickly disappear once the spotlight shifts. In a healthy culture, everyone feels safe to speak up about issues, and waste is seen as a problem for the whole team to solve together. Improvements are openly acknowledged, and decisions take into account both cost and capacity, not just what feels urgent. On the other hand, a dysfunctional culture hides problems to save face, sees waste reporting as an attack on leadership, and treats budget cycles as games instead of useful tools. Efficiency might be talked about in meetings, but doesn't guide daily actions, which ultimately undermines progress. When communicating about resource efficiency to your team, how you frame the message is crucial. If you say, "We are cutting costs because times are difficult," it can trigger defensive reactions. But if you frame it as, "We are reviewing how we use our resources to focus more on what matters most," it encourages engagement and a positive mindset. Be open about what you're measuring and why, and make sure to share the results, both the good and the bad. Celebrate the improvements and acknowledge the people behind them. When goals aren't met, talk about the reasons without placing blame. This transparent approach builds the trust needed for your team to bring up issues instead of hiding them. Here, we explore different digital tools for resource tracking that can significantly enhance how teams manage their workload and assets. First, project management tools like Asana, Monday.com, and Microsoft Project offer real-time tracking of task progress, time allocation, and workload distribution. This helps teams clearly see what's consuming their capacity and identify bottlenecks early. Then we have business intelligence dashboards such as Power BI and Tableau. These connect directly to operational data to display important metrics like cost, utilization, and productivity in an easily understandable way, highlighting patterns and anomalies without manual effort. Moving on to asset management systems, dedicated software tracks physical assets' location, condition, maintenance history, and usage, which is much more reliable than outdated manual records. Finally, financial management platforms provide cloud-based accounting and budget tools that offer real-time insight into spending by category, department, and time period, reducing delays between expenditures and review. Altogether, these digital tools create a comprehensive environment for efficient resource tracking and decision-making. Most resource efficiency programs start with good intentions and solid technical plans, but they often stumble due to predictable and avoidable mistakes. Understanding these common pitfalls beforehand can help us design programs that truly succeed. One major mistake is focusing only on cost reduction instead of value. When programs concentrate solely on spending less, they often end up cutting important capabilities too. Instead, we should always ask, what are we getting for this expenditure? And is that return worthwhile? Another issue is measuring too many things. Dashboards overloaded with 30 or more metrics create noise rather than clarity. The best programs track just a few key leading indicators closely, providing real insight without overwhelming the team. Finally, treating resource efficiency as a one-time project is a big error. This is an ongoing management practice that needs permanent ownership and regular review. Without this, programs tend to slip back to old habits within months after the initial effort. Keeping these points in mind helps build lasting success. Creating an action plan is essential for turning knowledge into real results. Remember, this plan doesn't have to be complicated. It should be specific, realistic, and most importantly, owned by someone responsible. Start by choosing the area where you have the most visibility and authority. Set clear targets and assign an owner to ensure accountability. By focusing on small, achievable improvements, you build confidence and momentum that can lead to bigger changes over time. This approach is far more effective than a comprehensive plan that never gets put into practice. Let's review the key learning points from our discussion. First, resource utilization is measurable, which means we can identify and quantify the gap between available capacity and actual productive output. You can't manage what you don't measure, so it all starts with deciding the right metrics to track. Next, cost control is not just reactive, but a proactive practice. Effective cost management means preventing unnecessary spending before it happens, and this requires ownership, visibility, and regular review rather than just end-of-month budget checks. When it comes to productivity, it's all about the output-to-input ratio. Improving productivity involves removing friction like waiting times, rework, and unnecessary processes, not simply pushing people to work harder or longer. We also learn that culture sustains what programs start. Technical improvements often fail without the right management culture. Things like accountability, clear performance data, and leadership behavior are what make efficiency gains stick over time. Finally, every level in the organization has a role to play. Senior leaders set the conditions, middle managers translate strategy into day-to-day decisions, and individual contributors apply efficiency in their own work while reporting observations. All three levels are essential for sustained success. Thank you for taking the time to work through this material. Resource utilization is one of those topics that touches every part of an organization, and yet it is rarely given the focused attention it deserves. The fact that you are here, engaging with these ideas seriously, is a meaningful step. I hope what you covered today gives you practical tools you can apply immediately. Whether you're reviewing a budget, planning a team's workload, managing equipment, or simply thinking more carefully about how your own time is spent. Continue building on these ideas, because organizations that excel in resource utilization are those where everyone asks the same simple question: are we getting real value from what we are putting in? Here are the key references that have informed this work. We draw heavily on Likers The Toyota Way, which is essential for understanding Toyota's management principles and lean waste identification. Kaplan and Cooper's work gives us valuable insights into activity-based costing and how integrated cost systems improve profitability. Davenport focuses on enhancing productivity among knowledge workers, highlighting approaches for better performance in complex, non-routine tasks. Womack and Jones provide a foundational perspective on lean thinking, emphasizing waste reduction and operational efficiency. Lastly, it's important to note that while we sought region-specific sources from the Gulf Cooperation Council and Southeast Asia, peer-reviewed English language references remain the most thoroughly verified for our content, and this gap is transparently acknowledged. Before we wrap up, I want to highlight an important disclaimer. This content is designed strictly for training and internal use, so please use it carefully because errors might be present. The author doesn't assume responsibility for any decisions based on this information, so it's essential to apply your professional judgment. Also, remember, this is not a replacement for specialized legal or professional advice, so consult qualified experts when dealing with complex issues.